Teke. That is the sound of what is probably the creepiest of Japanese urban myths. Teke is her name. It is typically that the Japanese would give the scariest of horror story creatures, such as a misleading, stupid sounding name. I would understand that the horror of the creature as well as anyone on account of the fact that I ran into her. Like a typical American skeptic, I didn't take to the Japanese folklore with much heed. After all, every story seemed to have the same moral: don't go out after the dark alone. Therefore, it was only natural to believe that the stories were only a system of keeping kids from wandering off. When one story proven wrong or ignored, another and more erotic story was made up to keep children developing in pants-wetting fear of wandering off. The stories range from the slit-mouthed woman to the impossible of a 50-story skeleton that would gladly tear off your head and drink the blood from your system like you were a juice box. But there is always holes in the story, such how in the world a 50-story skeleton hasn't been spotted by more than one person at a time, or even how something that massive could ever sneak up on anyone. And even the story of the slit-mouthed woman has its problems. The story supposedly features a beautiful Japanese woman who angered her husband, who in turn slit her mouth in his rage. Now she goes off with a surgical mask over her mouth, asking people if she's beautiful or not. If you say no, she takes a giant pair of scissors to you. If you say yes, she takes off her surgical mask and asks the same question again. At that point, you're pretty much screwed no matter what you say, unless you tell her she's so-so and then make a run for it while she's completing what to do with that statement. However, it is not mentioned that what happens if you see a giant pair of scissors on her back and just make a run for it before she asks you anything, or if you happen to be armed and shoot the girl in the head and at point blank rage at the moment she takes off the surgical mask. The story Teke is similar in ways of plot holes. The story is about a girl who jumps/falls into a subway and gets split in half. How she didn't get pulverized completely is anyone's guess. Afterwards, her spirit gets royalty ticked off at the world and chases down a poor sad she sees and cuts them in half. Her name is based off the noise she makes when she runs. As she runs, her long nails clapped against the ground rapidly. Teke. Even if dead spirits were able to contract with the real world, my question is why Teke is so angry. I've seen plenty of people who lost their legs in reality shows or whatever, and they seem pretty happy. And her trip in falling into a railroad wasn't anyone's fault besides her own. Therefore, the myth seems to contradict a national human mindset. At least that's what I thought until I saw her torso sitting on a wall late one Friday evening in a classic horror story fashion. It was incredibly dark and I was walking home alone. Like I mentioned earlier, I did not take much of the surrounding folklore seriously. I acted though it was a full-size girl for the longest time, and if I had known that she was an ultimate concentration of the horrific, mutilated nightmare fuel, I probably wouldn't have approached her so carelessly to ask if she was alright. However, my good intentions changed to a furious rush of terror when she jerked off violently at the sound of my voice and hopped off the wall. Before she hit the ground, I clearly saw that most of the bottom portion of her was missing. She threw towards me like an angry spider, making an insufferable groaning and shrieking sound. As she raced towards me, that's when I took off like a scared puppy. Who wouldn't? I'm a very fast runner. That untable fact has been mentioned several times to me by my peers ever since middle school. I would have stopped running after the few minutes if I had managed to leave whatever was chasing me behind. But the noise did not subside. In fact, I ran it. It grew steadily louder. Ticka, 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 ticka. The possibility of this being an insanely well computed prank had crossed my mind several times. I had asked for this joke at the moment I bragged to all my friends that ghost stories didn't scare me or that I didn't believe in ghosts. However, the way that the creature moved and how fast it went and how impossible it was to pull off something like this without Hollywood effects or circus creatures, I really had a little to believe except the fact that Teke Teke happened to be the main of an all too an all too true story. But during my rambling and strangely calm train of thought, I noticed something. I got my feet finally to stop and listen. The clicking sound had stopped. A gust of wind swirled around the corner of an alley wrapped around my feet. Suddenly, a bolt of movement shot past the corner of my eyes. Teke, 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 teke. I turned around the strange spurt of the horrendous clicking. However, the moment I focused my ears to find out where the spectre had run to the clicking quiet, I listened to what now a dead and ominous silence, the type of silence that would play out in a horror movie before some corpse fell out of the ceiling with its eyes sliced out the sockets and the mouth hanging open in the ghastly scream. Teka, 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 teka. I turned back into part of the sound again by I turned back at the sprout of the sounds again. My heart pounded so hard I felt like I was going to go unconscious. I should get out of here, I thought to myself. That was perhaps a bad idea on account of probably ability to watch my own back while mindlessly dashing. However, my body instantly obeyed and I took off. As I rounded the corner, I was stopped by a short and legless figure, Teka Teka, who stood there on her hands no more than a few feet away from me. My heart leaped up, slammed into my throat, and expelling a gag. At the sound of my gag, Teke looked into my eyes. In the light of the street lamp, I actually got a glimpse of her face. It means of symmetrical features as well as a well-shaped nose. She was actually a very lovely girl. However, the sheer panic of the situation made the beautiful matter very little to me, but the scariest thing was when I gagged, I swear that the pupils of her eyes grew until the whites disappeared from her sockets. When she turned and faced me, she raced at me while I attempted to start running again and lurched like a fierce predator towards my lower torso with both of her hands outstretched. It was unreal how far she was able to jump. I screamed and whacked her as best as I could to the side. I very well managed not to get cut in half, but her claw made a large gash in my side, just above my pelvis. I yelled as the blood began to pour out my side, and in a terrible, intelligent motion, I flopped down to the ground and onto my back. As I bled, by that time, Tika Tika had shaken off my blow and leapt into my form as I lay on my back. It was that point I switched from mentally intelligent survivalist to mindless panic child. I shrieked and twisted violently to shake off her. Most of what happened during that time was a blur. A bunch of painless slashes of claws and blood until my face was blinded by red. It was almost a surreal nightmare. No, it was a surreal nightmare. Every feeling of panic, terror that you feel when being attacked by an angry dog was mutilated by the fact that this unhappy and vengeful creature was less than a dog and far more frightening. It must have blacked out because suddenly I came to my senses in a railroad station. Everything was black and horrendous dark, but I was able to see my hands and a few faint glows of shattered and vanishing signs. I was unable to recall how I got into the railway station in the first place. I could have crawled there in my wounded state, or Teke Teke could have dragged me there. However, my memory at the point was fuzzy and unreadable. I checked behind my back and spine, crushed, and my torso was a full 180 degrees. When I looked behind me, it didn't hurt, but it produced a strange feeling of relief, like popping your back in a violent manner. I didn't mean to turn myself around in such a grotesque manner, but it didn't terrify me as much as one would expect when I straightened myself with another unbelievable crunch. I examined myself intentionally, reminding myself of the gash that was laid upon my side by Teke Teke. Now I was able to view the thing that was full in person. It was cut all the way from the front to the back in a clean slice. However, no blood poured from the wound. That was the final revision that I needed to know why I had been left alone. I'm dead, I thought to myself, still far too shaken to break the silence of the railway station by covering my thoughts. The horror clear at the time for the realization that death wasn't quite as terrible as I thought. It was still sinking slowly, however, I was quickly distracted by the sight of a young woman walking down as far as well-lit path far from me. Now noticing my huge form standing stiffly in the shadows, I was overwhelmed with the feeling that that it was my inner purpose to hurt her. I moved towards her. I moved towards the girl. My spine moved unnaturally and my torso twisted on and off my pelvis, which the large gash that kept the upper part of my body half holding on.